Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastic. I hate it when it throws my music away. But hellos, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastic today. Today is something completely different. Very different. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to be doing this. Also, I may sound a little bit louder because I've got my microphone a little bit closer, since I'll be reading Moby today. Slayer, hello, welcome in. How's be you? Hello. But yeah, let me show you guys the book I'll be reading. There it is. Hold on, let me fix that. So you guys can actually read it, and then I'll just turn it back again. Where is it? There it is. Transform! There we go. There it is. It's quite a beautiful book, eh? That's the side. Come on. There we go. And then that's the back. And it's got gold colored edges on the pages. It's quite a hefty book. So yeah, strap yourselves in, guys. We're in for an adventure. Yeah, what can we say to you today? Oh, must not forget the lamp. Very important. Put it there, like so. And then we shall put the keyboard over there, like so. Might be a little bit of a scuff stream because I don't know if my old camera is being picked up. But we shall have a look. But let's do our quick prayer and thanks for the Lord for this lovely day. And yeah, then we'll get into it. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day you blessed us with. Thank you for family, friends, and community. Lord, I pray that you bless those with healing who is currently struggling with their health, O Lord. I pray you bless them with speedy recovery and peace and calm, Lord, and strength. And I pray that you bless their families and their support system. And Lord, we pray for peace over the world, especially all those places that there's a lot of turmoil. And Lord, we pray for peace over Israel. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Alrighty. Let us see. Is this gonna be scuff stream? Amen's in chat. Let's go. The Lord is awesome. And if it wasn't for him, I would not be able to read. And that is true. Because I struggled to read many, many, many moons ago. Alright. It works! Yay! No scuff! Let's go! Okay. For some reason it's turned here. I don't remember it. There we go. Don't remember having it like that. Okay, now this is where the tricky part comes in. I'm going to move it. I want it a little bit closer. Very dangerous situation here. It might cut out the camera. Let's hope it doesn't. But it's very sensitive where it connects with the wire. And when I did this earlier, it did cut out. Let's just remember. Place it down nicely. Here we go. This will be great. Awesome, awesome. I'm glad that you think it's gonna be great. I haven't read this book before. I did a quick little just like a skim to see if there are like any foul language and stuff like that that I need to prepare myself for, but I didn't see any. Yeah, speaking in public, I've never really had such a big problem with, but reading in public? Just before we even start, apologies beforehand, friends, because I can sometimes read a word completely wrong or don't understand a word, even though it's a word that I use every day. It's kind of weird, but it's okay. Let's see, is that... I'd like you guys to see the letters as well, not just me. Can you guys see that? There's a few things that aged sort of poorly. Well, it's an old story. So we'll just have to, I don't know, accept it, I guess. Right. Can you guys see the words there? You're immune to old books? Yay! I love it when people are immune to old books. Because this one's got some really old language usage, you know, like King James kind of stuff. So, question. Do we want the music or do we not want the music? Because I can switch it off. Speaking about the music, if we do keep the music, is it too loud or is it fine? I really like this book. I've always wanted to read it. Oh, I've got an idea. I'm gonna play. Alright, oops, sorry. Was not meant to do that. Right, it's gonna have to go in skew. Printing it. How long have I been going? And I've been doing more playing than actual reading. Oh man. I'm a goof. I'm such a goof. Okay. On mobile, I have to look very hard, but people on bigger screens can read it. Alright. Cool. Right, yeah, because I don't even have it on full screen and it looks like I can see it there. I may need to use a ruler to help me read. See what I mean with it's dangerous having it so close to me? Oh my goodness. Alright. Alright, now, do we keep the music or does it fly? Does it bounce? Does it go boing, 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 boing? I'm not entirely sure how loud it is. Hold on. Let me see. Can't see my screen. My microphone. It demands attention. Turn it a little bit down. Okay. I'm gonna have to do that on the player, which is kind of tricky. Like that? Or a little bit more? I'm taking it one notch more. Because for some reason, my music things slider is grayed out and I can't do it in OBS. So I turned it down 3 notches. So hopefully, let me take it down to 5. That fine? I took it down 5 notches. So, hydrate. That good? Already. Okay, and before we start, I'm quickly gonna go to the BRB screen. I wanna go get me some ice cubes for my water. Because I'm starting to get a little bit warm. It's not been too warm today, but it is getting warm now. Doesn't help that I'm wearing multiple layers. But yeah. And because I'm gonna get me some more water and ice cubes, go get yourself some water. And if it's warm, get some ice cubes. We don't want to go thirsty. I mean, we're about to delve into the world of water, but it doesn't mean that we don't drink water. Okay, let's take care of ourselves. So BRB, go get yourself something to drink while we read. Ah, you're having a lunch right now. Cool. Has the music stopped? Why am I on the chat one? Music has stopped because for some reason it closed. Oh boy. Maybe I accidentally closed it. Apologies. Okay. Here we go. We have ourselves some water. Nice and cool. Okay. So here we go. Chapter 1 Loomings. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Okay. I'm gonna get confused a few times. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off. Then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball. With a philosophical flourish, Cato throws himself upon his sword. I quietly take to the ship. There is nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree, some time or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings toward the ocean with me. I don't know if any of that made sense when I read that. But that was fun. I'm gonna have a hard time with this heavy English. Alrighty, let's continue, shall we? Let me not knock this camera next to me. It's very close. There now is your insular city of the Manhattoes, belted round by wharves as Indian isles by coral reefs. Commerce surrounds it with her surf. Right and left, the streets take you waterward. Its extreme downtown is the Battery, where that noble mole is washed by waves and cooled by breezes, which a few hours previous were out of sight of land. Look at the crowds of water gazers there. Okay, so I take it that's people checking out the sea? Kind of like tourists that he's talking about, I think. Water gazers. I'm gonna learn a few new words and terms and sayings. This is exciting. Now I've come across a word that I need to practice first. Okay. Circumambulate the city of a dreamy Sabbath afternoon. I have no idea what that word means. Circumambulate. I have an idea, but I'm not sure. Is it like going around? Anyway. Circumambulate the city of a dreamy Sabbath afternoon. Go from Collier's Hook to County's Slip, and from thence by Whitehall northward. What do you see? Posted like silent sentinels all around the town, stand thousands upon thousands of mortal men fixed in ocean reveries. I'm not sure what that means either. Maybe I need to get my my dictionary. You know what? I've got an even better idea. We get ourselves a pen, and we get ourselves a paper, and we write down all the cool words that we don't know what they mean. The first one being ambulate. And then the next one, reveries. I'm not even sure if I said that correctly. Okay. So I'm going to, as we read, just write down all these strange words, and then afterwards I'm gonna go get the book, the Encarta, and see what all those funky words mean. Cool. Put that over there. Okay. I'm just gonna reread that. What do you see? Posted like silent sentinels all around the town, stand thousands upon thousands of mortal men fixed in ocean reveries. Some leaning against the spiles, some seated upon the pierheads. And then we move the book because it's so big. The mouse out of the way. Scuff. Like I said, there's gonna be scuff. Right, this. Here we go. I think that's a little bit better, lighting-wise, for you guys as well. While you are at it, fetch your thesaurus from the dinosaurs. That's a good idea. I don't have a thesaurus, but my parents did have one when I grew up, and I never stole it / borrow it permanently from them. I only did that with the Encarta, and I only did that with their permission. So I told them, listen, I want the Encarta. I'm gonna steal it, and they're like, my parents are fun people. They know I like that book. It's how I learned a lot of the words I know today. Some words that Hubs don't even know of, and he's more English than I am. T-Rex! Data! Hello! Welcome in. How's be you? Okay, yes. Let's continue, shall we? But yeah, maybe I should get myself a thesaurus at some point. Okay. Some looking over the bulwarks of ships from China, some high aloft in the rigging, as if striving to get a still better seaward peep. But these are all landsmen, of weak days spent up in lath and plaster, tied to counters, nailed to benches, clinched to desks. How then is this? Are the green fields gone? What do they here? Like, why are you guys here? Don't you have better things to do? Book club? Almost, Data, almost. We are reading Moby Dick. Check out that beautiful book. And that's not all. Check out those beautiful colors there. The blue lint. Very beautiful. Love this book. Hubs bought it many moons ago from a second-hand shop, and I've always wanted to read it, and I never did. The Big White Whale. Yes. And I'm using a ruler because it helps me keep track of where I am while I'm reading. Because my eyes have a way to like wander, and then everything gets all mushed together. So, but if you can read along. At least I hope it's good enough for you guys to read along. But yes, the Big White Whale. Okay, let's continue. I'm gonna take a lot of water sips. But look! Here come more crowds, pacing straight for the water and seemingly bound for a dive. Strange! Nothing will content them but the extremest limit of the land. Loitering under the shady lee of yonder warehouses will not suffice. No, they must get just as nigh the water as they possibly can without falling in. And there they stand, miles of them, leagues, inlanders all. They come from lanes and alleys, streets and avenues, north, east, south, and west. Yet here they all unite. Tell me, does the magnetic virtue of the needles of the compass of all those ships attract them thither? This is so fun. Once more, say you are in the country, in some high land of lakes. Take almost any path you please, and 10 to 1 it carries you down in a dale, and leaves you there by a pool in the stream. There is magic in it. Let the most absent-minded of men be plunged in his deepest reveries. Stand that man on his legs, set his feet a-going, and he will infallibly lead you to water. If water there be in all that region. So it just sounds like he's saying, you just push that guy forwards and he'll take you to the nearest watering hole. That's funny. Okay. That's just funny. Yeah. This should have been a comedy. Okay. But as far as I understand, it's not a comedy. Is it a drama or a tragedy? Interesting. Don't know yet. I suppose we'll find out as we go. Should you ever be athirst in the great American desert, try this experiment. If your caravan happened to be supplied with a metaphysical professor, yes, as everyone knows, meditation and water are wedded forever. I don't know. That didn't quite make sense to me. Let me just read that again. Should you ever be athirst in the great American desert, try this experiment. If your caravan happened to be supplied with a metaphysical professor. Yes, as everyone knows, meditation and water are wedded forever. Okay, so just wait, I guess? Or just take one of those guys and push him forward and follow him to the nearest watering hole. Okay. But here is an artist. He desires to paint you the dreamiest, shadiest, quietest, most enchanting bit of romantic landscape in all the valley of the Saco. What is the chief element he employs? There stand his trees, each with a hollow trunk, as if a hermit and a crucifix were within. And here sleeps his meadow, and there sleep his cattle, and up from yonder cottage goes a sleepy smoke. Deep into distant woodlands winds a mazy way, reaching to overlapping spurs of mountains bathed in their hillside blue. But though the picture lies thus tranced, and though this pine tree shakes down its sighs like leaves upon the shepherd's head, yet all were vain, unless the shepherd's eye was fixed upon the magic stream before him. Go visit the prairies in June, when for scores on scores of miles you wade knee-deep among tiger lilies. What is the one charm wanting? Water. There is not a drop of water there. Where Alright, where Niagara, but a cataract of sand? Would you travel your 1,000 miles to see it? Niagara? I've never heard of Niagara. Anyway. Were Niagara but a cataract of sand, would you travel your 1,000 miles to see it? Why did the poor poet of Tennessee, upon suddenly receiving 2 handfuls of silver, deliberate whether to buy him a coat, which he sadly needed, or invest his money in a pedestrian trip to Rockaway Beach? Why is almost every robust, healthy boy with a robust, healthy soul in him at some time or other crazy to go to sea? Why, upon your first voyage as a passenger, did you yourself feel such a mystical vibration when first told that you and your ship were now out of sight of land? Why did the old Persians hold the sea holy? Why did the Greeks give it a separate deity, an own brother of Jove? Surely all this is not without meaning, and still deeper the meaning of that story of Narcissus, who, because he could not grasp the tormenting, mild image he saw in the fountain, plunged into it and was drowned. But that same image we ourselves see in all rivers and oceans. It is the image of the ungraspable phantom of life, and this is the key to it all. No, Loomings is a short chapter, but it's feeling kind of long with the way I'm reading it. Let's take some sips. So warm my ice is gone already. Okay. Now, when I say that I'm in the habit of going to sea whenever I begin to grow hazy about the eyes and begin to be overconscious of my lungs, I do not mean to have it inferred that I ever go to sea as a passenger. For to go as a passenger you must needs have a purse, and a purse is but a rag unless you have something in it. Besides, passengers get seasick, grow quarrelsome, don't sleep of nights, do not enjoy themselves much as a general thing. No, I never go as a passenger, nor though I am something of a salt. Do I ever go to sea as a commodore, or a captain, or a cook? I abandon the glory of distinction of such offices to those who like them. For my part, I abominate all honorable, respectable toils, trials, and tribulations of every kind whatsoever. It is quite as much as I can do to take care of myself, without taking care of ships, barks, brigs, schooners, and what not. And as for going as cook, though I confess there is considerable glory in that, a cook being a sort of officer on shipboard, yet somehow I never fancied broiling fowls. Though once broiled, judiciously buttered, and judgmatically salted and peppered, there is no one who will speak more respectfully, not to say reverentially, of a broiled fowl than I will. It is out of the idolatrous dotings of the old Egyptians upon broiled ibis and roasted river horse that you see the mummies of those creatures in their huge bakehouses, the pyramids. No, when I go to sea, I go as a simple sailor, right before the mast, plump down into the forecastle, aloft there to the royal masthead. True, they rather order me about some, and make me jump from spar to spar, like a grasshopper in a May meadow. And at first this sort of thing is unpleasant enough. It touches one's sense of honor, particularly if you come of an old established family in the land, the Van Rensselaers, or Randolphs, or Hardicannets. Not sure how to say that name. I probably butchered it. How many chapters are you going to read? I'm aiming for 4. Because many of these are quite short. Number 3 is not quite so short. But yeah, between 3 and 4 chapters. We still have like just over 2.5 hours of stream left. So lots of time to read. And lots of time for me to practice. I'm gonna take that out. Okay. Where's that funny name? There it is. Hardy Canuts. That's a surname? Well, anyway. Let us continue. And more than all, if just previous to putting your hand into the tar pot, you have been lording it as a country schoolmaster, making the tallest boys stand in awe of you, the transition is a keen one, I assure you, from a schoolmaster to a sailor, and requires a strong decoction of Seneca and the Stoics to enable you to grin and bear it. But even this wears off in time. What of it if some old hunks of sea captain orders me to get a broom and sweep down the decks? What does that indignity amount to? Weighed, I mean, in the scales of the New Testament. Do you think the Archangel Gabriel thinks anything the less of me because I promptly and respectfully obey that old hunks in that particular instance? Who ain't a slave? Tell me that. Well then, however the old sea captains may order me about, however they may thump and punch me about, I have the satisfaction of knowing that it is all right, that everybody else is one way or other served in much the same way, either in a physical or metaphysical point of view, that is. And so the universal thump is passed around, and all hands should rub each other's shoulder blades and be content. Sounds rough. Sounds quite rough indeed. Again, I always go to sea as a sailor, because they make a point of paying me for my trouble, whereas they never pay passengers a single penny that I ever heard of. On the contrary, passengers themselves must pay, and there is all the difference in the world between paying and being paid. The act of paying is perhaps the most uncomfortable infliction that the 2 orchard thieves entailed upon us. But being paid? What will compare with it? The urbane activity with which a man receives money is really marvelous, considering that we so earnestly believe money to be the root of all earthly ills, and that on no account can a moneyed man ever enter heaven. Ha! How cheerfully we consign ourselves to perdition. I used to know what perdition means, but now I'm gonna make sure. Alright. I think there was another word, but I can't remember where it is. It wasn't so strange. So apparently I know the word. Okay. Finally, I always go to sea as a sailor because of the wholesome exercise and pure air of the forecastle deck. For as in this world, headwinds are far more prevalent than winds from astern. That is, if you never violate the Pythagorean maxim. I'm gonna have to read about that one. Pythagorean? Pythagorean? Cool. Alright, let's read that again. For as in this world, headwinds are far more prevalent than winds from astern. That is, if you never violate the Pythagorean maxim. So for the most part, the Commodore on the quarterdeck gets his atmosphere at second hand from the sailors on the forecastle. So the guys in the front gets all the good stuff, and the guys in the back get second-hand air. He's fine with it because he doesn't have to work for years at a time. Yes, that is true. That is true. He works per trip. That's actually pretty clever. He doesn't have to pay for his travels, but he has to work for them. And I think that's fair. In a way. He thinks he breathes it first, but not so. In much the same way do the commonalty lead their leaders in many other things. That didn't make sense to me. I need to read that again. Okay. He thinks he breathes it first, but not so. In much the same way do the commonalty lead their leaders in many other things, at the same time that the leader is little suspected. That sentence still doesn't make sense to me. Anyway. But wherefore it was that after having repeatedly smelt the sea as a merchant sailor, I should now take it into my head to go on a whaling voyage. This is the invisible police officer of the fates, who has the constant surveillance of me, and secretly dogs me, and influences me in some unaccountable way. He can better answer than anyone else. And doubtless my going on this whaling voyage formed part of the grand program of Providence that was drawn up a long time ago. It came in as a sort of brief interlude and solo between more expensive performances. I take it that this part of the bill must have run something like this. Grand contested election for the presidency of the United States. Whaling voyage by one Ishmael. Bloody battle in Afghanistan. That's quite the headline. Though I cannot tell why it was exactly that those stage managers, the fates, put me down for this shabby part of a whaling voyage, when others were set down for magnificent parts in high tragedies and short and easy parts in genteel comedies and jolly parts in farces, though I cannot tell why this was exactly. Yet, now that I recall all the circumstances, I think I can see a little into the springs and motives which, being cunningly presented to me under various disguises, induced me to set about performing the part I did, besides cajoling me into the delusion that it was a choice resulting from my own unbiased free will and discriminating judgment. Chief among these motives was the overwhelming idea of the great whale himself. Ooh, now we're getting there. Such a portentous and mysterious monster roused all my curiosity. Then the wild and distant seas where he rolled his island bulk, the under this is what happens when words get cut into two pieces. The undeliverable, nameless perils of the whale, these with all the attending marvels of 1,000 Patagonian sights and sounds, helped to sway me to my wish. We're almost at chapter 2. With other men, perhaps, such things would not have been inducements, but as for me, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas and land on barbarous coasts, not ignoring what is good. I am quick to perceive a horror and could still be social with it. Would they let me? Since it is well to be on friendly terms with all the inmates of the place one lodges in. By reason of these things, then, the whaling voyage was welcome. The great floodgates of the wonder world swung open, and in the wild conceits that swayed me to my purpose, two and two there floated into my inmost soul endless processions of the whale, and, mid most of them all, one grand hooded phantom, like a snow hill in the air. One word I found in a book, brook, which I hadn't seen it used that way. The old pony brooked not for his halter. Ah, the old curiosity shop. I've seen that word used like that before. Maybe it's because I've read so many Western stories. But that is cool. Alright, let us have ourselves a water break. Whew. Edward starts in 3 minutes. No! Edward's new. Criminal Edwards. Phew. So how's my reading been so far? Pretty lackluster. I'm getting into it now. I know the first page was an absolute mess with all these with all that fun stuff. So how's be you, Data? Sir Data. Hope you are doing well today. The water is scratching my throat. I don't know why. Happens sometimes. Leave it, that little box is too thick. Here we go, that's better. Alrighty, chapter 2. I think you did good. I could occasionally watch a streamer who reads a book on stream while doing a monotonous task in Minecraft. Oh, that's cool. Awesome. I'm glad you think I did good. Alrighty, chapter 2. The carpet bag. I stuffed a shirt or two into my old carpet bag, tucked it under my arm, and started for Cape Horn and the Pacific. Quitting the good city of Old Manhattan, I duly arrived in New Bedford. It was a Saturday night in December. Much was I disappointed upon learning that the little packet for Nantucket had already sailed, and that no way of reaching that place would offer these old ways of speaking throws me off. Much was I disappointed upon learning that the little packet for Nantucket had already sailed, and that no way of reaching that place would offer till the following Monday. As most young candidates for the pains and penalties of whaling stop at this same New Bedford, thence to embark on their voyage, it may as well be related that I, for one, had no idea of doing so. For my mind was made up to sail in no other than a Nantucket craft, because there was a fine, boisterous something about everything connected with that famous old island, which amazingly pleased me. Besides, though New Bedford has of late been gradually monopolizing the business of whaling, and though in this matter poor old Nantucket is now much behind her, yet Nantucket was her great original, the Tyre of this Carthage, the place where the first dead American whale was stranded. Where else but from Nantucket did those aboriginal whalemen, the Red Men, first sally out in canoes to give chase to the Leviathan? And where but from Nantucket, too, did that first adventurous little sloop put forth, partly laden with imported cobblestones, so goes the story, to throw at the whales in order to discover when they were nigh enough to risk a harpoon from the bowsprit. They threw rocks? Okay. Interesting. Now having a day, and still another night following before me in New Bedford, ere I could embark for my destined port, it became a matter of concernment where I was to eat and sleep. Meanwhile, it was a very dubious looking, nay, a very dark and dismal night, bitingly cold and cheerless. I knew no one in the place. With anxious grapnels I had sounded my pocket, and only brought up a few pieces of silver. So, whenever you go, Ishmael, said I to myself, as I stood in the middle of a dreary street, shouldering my bag and comparing the gloom towards the north with the darkness towards the south, wherever in your wisdom you may conclude to lodge for the night, my dear Ishmael, be sure to inquire the price, and don't be too particular. With halting steps I paced the streets and passed the sign of the Crossed Harpoons, but it looked too expensive and jolly there. Further on, from the bright red windows of the Swordfish Inn, there came such fervent rays that it seemed to have melted the packed snow and ice from before the house. For everywhere else the congealed frost lay 10 inches thick in a hard asphaltic pavement, rather weary for me. Then I struck my foot against the flinty projections, because from hard, remorseless service the soles of my boots were in a most miserable plight. Too expensive and jolly, again, thought I, pausing one moment to watch the broad glare in the street, and hear the sounds of the tinkling glasses within. But go on, Ishmael, said I at last. Don't you hear? Get away from before the door. Your packet boots are stopping the way. So on I went. I now by instinct followed the streets that took me waterward, for there, doubtless, were the cheapest, if not the cheeriest inns. Okay. Such dreary streets, blocks of blackness, not houses on either hand, and there and here and there a candle, like a candle moving about in a tomb. At this hour of the night of the last day of the week, that quarter of the town proved all but deserted. But presently I came to a smoky light proceeding from a low, wide building, the door of which stood invitingly open. It had a careless look, as if it were meant for the uses of the public. So entering, the first thing I did was to stumble over an ash box in the porch. Ha! thought I. Ha! As the flying particles almost choked me. Are these ashes from that destroyed city, Gomorrah? Dude, he was caught off guard by that thing. But the crossed harpoons and the swordfish. This then needs to be the sign of the trap. However, I picked myself up, and hearing a loud voice within, pushed on and opened a second interior door. It seemed the great black parliament sitting in Tophet. What? It seemed the great black parliament sitting in Tophet. 100 black faces turned around in their rows to peer, and beyond a black angel of doom was beating a book in a pulpit. It was a Negro church, and the preacher text was about blackness or darkness. Oh my goodness, the descriptions in this book. And the weeping and wailing and teeth gnashing there. Ah, Ishmael, muttered I, backing out. Wretched entertainment at the sign of the trap. Moving on, I at last came to a dim sort of light not far from the docks, and heard a forlorn creaking in the air. And looking up, saw a swinging sign over the door with a white painting upon it, faintly representing a tall straight jet of misty spray, and these words underneath: The Spouter Inn, Peter Coffin. So, I take it this trap was a church that he wandered into. The poor fella. First he kicks an ash box and gets a lung full of ash, and then he realized he stumbled into a church. Oh no. And the descriptions, oh no. This is wild. This book is wild. He thought it was an inn. I know, right? That's too much. That's too much. Oh man. I bet those guys were as was as taken aback as he was. I have never. This is my first time reading it. Thus the reactions. Oh man. That was funny. Blow the Twitch ballast! Emergency surface! Yeah, that's a submarine. Coming up from the depths below. Yeah, this one, I've never read this before. Cutie patootie, hello! Welcome in! How's be you? Welcome to a very interesting reading. The book of Moby Dick. It's about a whale. It's called Moby Dick, or The Whale. And there he is. You read it sometime in your childhood? And listening to that streamer read it. Cool. Have you ever heard of the story of Moby Dick? Cutie patootie? Also, how's be you? Welcome in. Never read books. Well, there's been so many movie adaptations of this story. You don't have to read a book. You've heard of it? Cool. I saw a movie with my dad many moons ago. Many moons and seasons ago. I was not yet a teen. Me and my dad at midnight, because that's when they played this movie. It was one of those retro replay things late at night that they did back in the old days. Back in the day. And me and my dad were watching 1956 Moby Dick. It was wild. And that story kept to a lot of what is in this book. The way of speaking also. And narration and stuff. It was quite interesting. But it's a bit of a rough movie. But it's kind of good from what I can remember. Which take it with a whole bag of salt. I can't remember very much. I remember what the people looked like, I remember how they spoke, and I remembered the whale, and that is it. That is all I remember. And that it was a rough movie. Back in my day. Yes. And oh boy, will there be stuff to react to when he goes to bed. Yes. We shall see. We shall see. Because this guy still hasn't found a bed yet. In my day, ew. Yeah. Alrighty. The Spouter Inn, Peter Coffin. That is quite the name. Coffin? Spouter? Rather ominous in that particular connection, thought I. But it is a common name in Nantucket, they say, and I suppose this Peter here is an immigrant from there. As the light looked so dim, and the place, for the time, looked quiet enough, and the dilapidated little wooden house itself looked as if it might have been carted here from the ruins of some burnt district, and as the swinging sign had a poverty-stricken sort of creak to it, I thought that here was the very spot for cheap lodgings, and the best of pea coffee. It was a queer sort of place, a gable-ended old house, one side palsied, as it were, and leaning over sadly. It stood on a sharp, bleak corner, where that tempestuous wind, Euroclydon, kept up a worse howling than ever it did about poor Paul's tossed craft. Euroclydon, nevertheless, is a mighty pleasant zephyr to anyone indoors, with his feet on the hob quietly toasting for bed. In judging of the tempestuous wind called Euroclydon, says an old writer of whose work I possess the only copy extant, it maketh a marvellous difference, whether thou lookest out at it from a glass window where the frost is all on the outside, or whether thou observest it from that sashless window, where the frost is on both sides, and of which the White Death is the only glazier. True enough, thought I, as this passage occurred to my mind. Old black letter, thou reasonest well. Yes, these eyes are windows, and this body of mine is the house. What a pity they didn't stop up the chinks and the crannies, though, and thrust in a little lint here and there. But it's too late to make any improvements now. The universe is finished. The copestone is on, and the chips were carted off 1,000,000 years ago. Poor Lazarus there, chattering his teeth against the curbstone for his pillow, and shaking off his tatters with his shiverings, he might plug up both ears with rags, and put a corn cob into his mouth, and yet that would not keep out the tempestuous Euroclydon. Euroclydon, says old Dives, in his red silken wrapper. He had a redder one afterwards. Pooh, pooh. What a fine frosty night. How Orion glitters. What northern lights. Let them talk of the oriental summer climes of everlasting conservatories. Give me the privilege of making my own summer with my own coals. But what thinks Lazarus? Can he warm his blue hands by holding them up to the grand northern lights? Would not Lazarus rather be in Sumatra than here? Would he not far rather lay him down lengthwise along the line of the equator? Ye gods, go down to the fiery pit itself in order to keep out the frost. Now, that Lazarus should lie stranded there on the curbstone before the door of Dives, this is more wonderful than that an iceberg should be moored to one of the Moluccas. I don't know what a Moluccas is. Yet Dives himself, he too lives like a Tsar in an ice palace made of frozen sights, and being a president of Temperance Society, he only drinks the tepid tears of orphans. But no more of this blubbering now. We are going a whaling, and there is plenty of that yet to come. Let us scrape the ice from our frosted feet and see what sort of place this spouter may be. That was an interesting chapter too. Let me see. Kentucky? Kentucky Fried Chicken! KFC. Now I'm hungry. Whew. I've actually made good time. I might actually do the 4 chapters. We shall see. Because chapter 3 is quite long. Well, in comparison to the last 2 that I just read. It's so warm, my ice cubes are gone. Ages ago. Oh yeah. Slayer, you said you were having lunch. What did you have for lunch? I'm curious. I is curious. Also, well, I'm having a short little break from reading. Here in the front, there's Mr. Herman Melville. Herman, as we say here in South Africa. Herman Melville. He lived from 1819 to 1891. Interesting. But yeah, so we have like publisher preface. And introduction, which is also quite the read. And then we also have stuff like etymology and extracts. These extracts are wild. I mean, there's a lot of them. I'm not quite sure what to make of them. It seems to be not entirely sure what these extracts are. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this book. A lot of things going on in this book. Very, very cool. And you can see my camera's reflection. Okay. Let us continue then, shall we? Chapter 3. The Spouter Inn. Entering that gable-ended Spouter Inn, you found yourself in a wide, straggling. You find yourself in a wide, low, straggling entry with old-fashioned wainscots. I forgot what a wainscot is. Take one, booked. Ja, two, book 'em, dunno. Nice. Bacon. A 3-stream streak, let's go! Thanks for that stream streak there, Data. Okay. Straggling entry with old-fashioned wainscots, reminding one of the bulwarks of some condemned old craft. On one side hung a very large oil painting, so thoroughly besmoked and every way defaced, that in the unequal crosslights by which you viewed it, it was only by diligent study and a series of systematic visits to it and careful inquiry of the neighbors that you could any way arrive at an understanding of its purpose. Such unaccountable masses of shades and shadows that at first you almost thought some ambitious young artist in the time of the New England hags had endeavored to delineate chaos bewitched. So, a painting of shadows? Sounds very dark. But by dint of much and earnest contemplation, and oft-repeated ponderings, and especially by throwing open the little window towards the back of the entry, you at last come to the conclusion that such an idea, however wild, might not be altogether unwarranted. But what most puzzled and confounded you as a long, limber, portentous black mass of something hovering in the center of the picture over 3 blue dim perpendicular lines floating in a nameless yeast. A boggy, soggy, squitchy picture truly, enough to drive a nervous man distracted. Yet was there a sort of indefinite, half-attained, unimaginable sublimity about it that fairly froze you to it, till you involuntarily took an oath with yourself to find out what that marvelous painting meant. Ever and anon a bright, but, alas, deceptive idea would dart you through. It's the Black Sea in a midnight gale. It's the unnatural combat of the 4 primal elements. It's a blasted heath. It's a Hyperborean winter scene. It's the breaking up of the icebound stream of time. But at last all these fancies yielded to that one portentous something in the picture's midst, that once found out, all the rest were plain. But stop, does it not bear a faint resemblance to a gigantic fish? Even the great Leviathan himself? In fact, the artist's design seemed this. The final theory of my own, partly based upon the aggregated opinions of many aged persons with whom I conversed upon the subject. The picture presents a Cape Horner in a great hurricane, the half-foundered ship faltering there with its 3 dismantled masts alone visible, and an exasperated whale, while purposing to spring clean over the craft, is in the enormous act of impaling himself upon the 3 mastheads. The opposite wall of this entry was hung all over with a heathenish array of monstrous clubs and spears. Some were thickly set with glittering teeth resembling ivory saws. Others were tufted with knots of human hair, and one was sickle-shaped, with a vast handle sweeping around like the segment made in the new-mown grass by a long-armed mower. You shuddered as you gazed, and wondered what monstrous cannibal and savage could ever have gone a death-harvesting with such a hacking, horrifying implement. So we get like this whole rant about this painting, and then we get another rant about all this stuff on the other walls. Weapons and stuff. Mixed with these were rusty old whaling lances and harpoons, all broken and deformed. Some were storied weapons. With this once long lance, now wildly elbowed, 50 years ago did Nathan Swain kill 15 whales between a sunrise and a sunset. That's a lot of whales in one day. And that harpoon, so like a corkscrew now, was flung in Javan seas and ran away with by a whale, years afterwards slain off the Cape of Blanco. The original iron entered nigh the tail, and, like a restless needle sojourning in the body of a man, travelled full 40 feet, and at last was found embedded in the hump. Wow. So that thing travelled. Crossing the dusky entry, and on through yon low-arched way, cut through what in old times must have been a great central chimney, with fireplaces all around, you enter the public room. A still duskier place is this, with such low ponderous beams above, and such old wrinkled planks beneath, that you would almost fancy you trod some old craft's cockpits, especially of such a howling night, when this corner-anchored old ark rocked so furiously. On one side stood a long, low, shelf-like table, covered with cracked glass cases, filled with dusty rarities gathered from this wide world's remotest nooks. Projecting from the further angle of the room stands a dark-looking den, the bar, a rude attempt at a right whale's head. Huh? Okay. A rude attempt at a right whale's head. Cool. And there is a picture. At one end, a tar was still further adorning the bench with his jackknife. Be that how it may, there stands the vast arched bone of the whale's jaw, so wide a coach might almost drive beneath it. Within are shabby shelves, ranged round with old decanters, bottles, flasks, and in those jaws of swift destruction, like another cursed Jonah, by which name indeed they called him, bustles a little withered old man, who, for their money, dearly sells the sailors deliriums and death. Abominable are the tumblers into which he pours his poison, though true cylinders without, within the villainous green goggling glasses, deceitfully tapering downwards to a cheating bottom. Parallel meridians rudely pegged into the glass, surrounded these footpads goblets. Fill to this mark, and your charge is but a penny. To this, a penny more, and so on, to the full glass. The Cape Horn measure, which you may gulp down for a shilling. Upon entering the place, I found a number of young seamen gathering about a table, examining by dim light divers specimens of scrimshander. Scrimshander? I'm gonna have to look that up. Examining diverse specimens of scrimshander. I sought the landlord, and telling him my desire to be accommodated with a room, received for answer that his house was full, not a bed unoccupied. That's. The place is fully booked, man. Coming up on break time? Yes, we still have a few minutes. About 5 minutes. But yes, thank you for the reminder, Sir Data. Might just be enough to you know, this is where they're starting to talk to each other. So maybe I'll read that when we come back from our break. In the meantime, we can inspect this picture a little bit better. It's quite the drawing. Jackknife. Yeah. There we go. We shall continue our reading, where they start talking with each other after the break. So, Data, what do you think of my reading so far? Not been all that good in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm not the one listening to me. Alrighty, well, we might as well have our break a little bit early. So, Remember to hydrate, peoples. We must take care of our shells. And I shall see you guys after the break. So, do let me know what you've had for snacks and for drinkings. And I shall see you guys after the break. And before I go, we must remember to set our alarms for 30 minutes so we can get back to the reading. I see you're gonna have yourself a coffee then, Sir Data. Maybe a cappuccino? Forgot to turn this back. There we go. Ha! Now it looks good again. Okay. Hey folks. See you all after the break. Take care of yourselves. Remember to stretch out them limbs. We don't want our limbs to atrophy now, do we? I'll see you guys later. Enjoy the break. BRB. Hello everybody, I is back, and how is you? Did you enjoy your break? And what did you have for munchies and drinks? I had leftover mince and pasta. Oh, and a peach. That's what I had. Alrighty. Let us open to where we were. Moby Dick surfaced again! Yes. Yes, he does. Yes, he is. So did you have coffee? Sir Data? Or what did you have? Ooh, tea. Nice. I should start drinking tea again. I haven't really drunk tea since I got home from... Well, actually I haven't drunk tea since just before Christmas. So it's been a while. I should get back onto that expedition. Alrighty. Right, so here we are, where we realized that the inn is fully booked. So this is a problem for our dear friend. What's his name? Ishmael. Only tea is just bad. Well, get yourself some better tea, Data. Alrighty. Not a bed unoccupied. Well, such a full house. But avast, he added, tapping his forehead. You ain't no objections to sharing a harpooner's blanket, have ye? I suppose you are going a whalin', so you'd better get used to that sort of thing. I told him that I never liked to sleep two in a bed, that if I should ever do so, it would depend upon who the harpooner might be, and that if he, the landlord, really had no other place for me, and the harpooner... Okay, a harpooner. I keep saying harpooner. And the harpooner was not decidedly objectionable. Why, rather than wander further about a strange town on so bitter a night, I would put up with the half of a decent man's blanket. I thought so. All right, take a seat. Supper? You want supper? Supper'll be ready directly. That's quick. You can't afford awesome tea? Oh no, man. I sat down on an old wooden settle, carved all over like a bench on the battery. At one end, a ruminating tar was still further adorning it with his jackknife. stooping over and diligently working away at the space between his legs. He was trying his hand at the ship under full sail, but he didn't make much headway, I thought. At last, some 4 or 5 of us were summoned to our meal in an adjoining room. It was cold as Iceland, no fire at all. The landlord said he couldn't afford it. Nothing but 2 dismal tallow candles, each in a winding sheet. Or is it winding sheet? I'm not sure. We were fain to button up our monkey jackets and hold to our lips cups of scalding tea with our half-frozen fingers. But the fare was of the most substantial kind. Not only meat and potatoes, but dumplings. Good heavens! Dumplings for supper? One young fellow in a green box coat addressed himself to these dumplings in a most direful manner. "My boy," said the landlord, "you'll have the nightmare to a dead certainty." "Landlord," I whispered, "that ain't the harpooneer, is it?" "Oh no," he said, looking a sort of diabolically funny. "The harpooneer is a dark-complexioned chap. He never eats dumplings. He don't. He eat nothing but steaks, and he likes 'em rare." "The devil he does," says I. "Where is that harpooneer? Is he here?" "He'll be here afore long," was the answer. I could not help it, but I began to feel suspicious of this dark-complexioned harpooneer. At any rate, I made up my mind that if it so turned out that we should sleep together, he must undress and get into the bed before I did. Supper over, the company went back to the bar-room, when, knowing not what else to do with myself, I resolved to spend the rest of the evening as a looker-on. Presently a rioting noise was heard without. Starting up, the landlord cried, "That's the Grumpus crew. I seed her report in the offing this morning. A 3 years' voyage and a full ship. Hurrah, boys! Now we'll have the latest news from the Fijis." A tramping of sea boots was heard in the entry. The door was flung open, and in rolled a wild set of mariners enough. Enveloped in their shaggy watch coats, and with their heads muffled in woolen comforters, all bedarned and ragged, and their beards stiff with icicles, they seemed an eruption of bears from Labrador. They had just landed from their boat, and this was the first house they entered. No wonder, then, that they made a straight wake for the whale's mouth, the bar, when the wrinkled little old Jonah, there officiating, soon poured them out brimmers all round. So those glasses were filled level. Oh yeah, all the way to the top. One complained of a bad cold in his head, upon which Jonah mixed him a pitch-like potion of gin and molasses, which he swore was a sovereign cure for all colds and catarrhs whatsoever, never mind of how long-standing, or whether caught off the coast of Labrador, or on the weather side of an ice island. The liquor soon mounted into their heads, as it generally does even with the errantest topers newly landed from sea, and they began capering about most obstreperously. I observed, however, that one of them held somewhat aloof, and though he seemed desirous not to spoil the hilarity of his shipmates by his own sober face, yet upon the whole he refrained from making as much noise as the rest. The man interested me at once, and since the sea gods had ordained that he should soon become my shipmate, though but a sleeping partner one, so far as this narrative is concerned, I will here venture upon a little description of him. He stood full 6 feet in height, with noble shoulders and a chest like a cofferdam. I have seldom seen such brawn in a man. His face was deeply brown and burnt, making his white teeth dazzling by the contrast, while in the deep shadows of his eyes floated some reminiscences that did not seem to give him much joy. His voice at once announced that he was a southerner, and from his fine stature, I thought he must be one of those tall mountaineers from the Alleghanian Ridge in Virginia. When the revelry of his companions had mounted to its height, this man slipped away unobserved, and I saw no more of him till he became my comrade on the sea. In a few minutes, however, he was missed by his shipmates, and being, it seems, for some reason a huge favourite with them, they raised a cry of "Bulkington! Bulkington! Where's Bulkington?" and darted out of the house in pursuit of him. So he slips out and everybody's going after him. Not entirely sure where he went, but they're looking for him. It was now about 9 o'clock, and the room seeming almost supernaturally quiet after these orgies. I began to congratulate myself upon a little plan that had occurred to me just previous to the entrance of the seamen. No man prefers to sleep two in a bed. In fact, you would a good deal rather not sleep with your own brother. I don't know how it is, but people do like to be private when they are sleeping. And when it comes to sleeping with an unknown stranger in a strange inn in a strange town, and that stranger a harpooner, then the objections indefinitely multiply. Nor was there any earthly reason why I, as a sailor, would sleep two in a bed, more than anybody else, for sailors no more sleep two in a bed at sea than bachelor kings do ashore. To be sure, they all sleep together in one apartment, but you have your own hammock, and cover yourself with your own blanket, and sleep in your own skin. This guy is having so many objections to sharing a bed. The more I pondered over this harpooner, the more I abominated the thought of sleeping with him. It was fair to presume that, being a harpooner, his linen or woolen, as the case might be, would not be of the tidiest, certainly none of the finest. I began to twitch all over. Besides, it was getting late, and my decent harpooner ought to be home and going bedwards. Suppose now he should tumble in upon me at midnight. How could I tell from what vile hole he had been coming? Landlord, I've changed my mind about that harpooner. I shan't sleep with him. I'll try the bench here. Ooh. Classic. Just as you please. I'm sorry I can't spare ye a tablecloth for a mattress, and you're a plaguey rough board here. What? And it's a plague... Is it plaguey or plagai? I don't know how to say this word. And it's a It's a rough board here. Feeling of the knots and notches, but wait a bit. Scrimshander, that word is gonna get me. And he has yet to know how much worse it is than he thinks his strange bedfellow. I know, right? Whew. But wait a bit, Scrimshander. I've got a carpenter's plane there in the bar. Wait, I say, and I'll make ye snug enough. So saying, he procured the plane, and with his old silk handkerchief first dusting the bench, vigorously set to planing away at my bed, the while grinning like an ape. The shavings flew right and left, till at last the plain iron came bump against the indestructible knot. The landlord was near spraining his wrist, and I told him for heaven's sake to quit. The bed was soft enough to suit me, and I did not know how all the planing in the world could make eider down of a pine plank. So gathering up the shavings with another grin and throwing them into the great stove in the middle of the room, he went about his business and left me in a brown study. And I now took the measure of the bench and found that it was a foot too short, but that could be mended with a chair. But it was a foot too narrow, and the other bench in the room was about 4 inches higher than the planed one, so there was no yoking them. I then placed the first bench lengthwise along the only clear space against the wall, leaving a little interval between, for my back to settle down in. But as soon as I found that there came such a draught of cold air over me from under the sill of the window, that this plan would never do at all, especially as another current from the rickety door met the one from the window, and both together formed a series of small whirlwinds in the immediate vicinity of the spot where I had thought to spend the night. This is just a picture of the party going on. The devil fetch that harpooner, thought I. But stop, couldn't I steal a march on him, bolt his door inside, and jump into his bed, not to be wakened by the most violent knockings? It seemed no bad idea, but upon second thoughts I dismissed it. For who could tell but what the next morning, so soon as I popped out of the room, the harpooner might be standing in the entry, all ready to knock me down? That's another thought. You don't want to make those kind of guys angry. Still looking around me again and seeing no possible chance of spending a sufferable night unless in some other person's bed, I began to think that after all I might be cherishing unwarrantable prejudices against this unknown harpooner. Thinks I, I'll wait a while. He must be dropping in before long. I'll have a good look at him then, and perhaps we may become jolly good bedfellows after all. There's no telling. But though the other boarders kept coming in by 1s, 2s, and 3s, and going to bed, yet no sign of my harpooner. "Landlord," said I, "what sort of chap is he? Does he always keep such late hours?" It was now hard upon 12 o'clock. The landlord chuckled again with his lean chuckle, and seemed to be mightily tickled at something beyond my comprehension. He knows something we don't. No, he answered. Generally, he's an early bird. Early to bed and early to rise. Yeah, he's the bird what catches the worm. But tonight he went out peddling, you see. And I don't see what on earth keeps him so late. Unless, maybe, he can't sell his head. His head. Can't sell his head? What sort of a bamboozlingly story is this you are telling me? Getting into a towering rage. Do you pretend to say, landlord, that this harpooner is actually engaged this blessed Saturday night, or rather Sunday morning, in peddling his head around this town? That's precisely it, said the landlord. And I told him he couldn't sell it here. The market is overstocked. Okay. So people has too much of the stuff already. Whatever head it is. With what? Shouted I. Like, what is this stuff? What? This head, what is it? The market's overstocked. With what? With heads, to be sure. Ain't there too many heads in this world? I tell you what it is, landlord, said I quite calmly. You'd better stop spinning that yarn to me. I'm not green. Maybe not, taking out a stick and whittling a toothpick. But I rather guess you'll be done brown if that 'ere harpooner hears you're slandering his head. I'll break it for him, said I, now flying into passion again at this unaccountable farrago of the landlord's. It's broke already, he said. Broke? Said I. Broke? What do you mean? Certain, and that's the very reason he can't sell it, I guess. Landlord, said I, going up to him as cool as Mount Hecla in a snowstorm. Landlord, stop whittling. You and I must understand one another, and that too without delay. I come to your house and want a bed. You tell me you can only give me half a one. The other half belongs to a certain harpooner, and about this harpooner, whom I have not yet seen, you persist in telling me the most mystifying and exasperating stories, tending to beget in me an uncomfortable feeling towards the man whom you design for my bedfellow. A sort of connection, landlord, which is an intimate and confidential one in the highest degree. I now demand of you to speak out and tell me who and what this harpooner is, and whether I shall be in all respects safe to spend the night with him. And in the first place, you will be so good as to unsay that story about selling his head, which, if true, I take to be good advice that this harpooner is stark mad, and if you've no idea, and I've no idea, of sleeping with a madman. And you, sir, you, I mean, landlord, you, sir, by trying to induce me to do so unknowingly, would thereby render yourself liable to a criminal prosecution. This guy's upset. Well, said the landlord, fetching a long breath, that's a pretty long sermon for a chap that drips a little now and then. But be easy, be easy. This here harpooner I have been telling you of has just arrived from the South Seas, where he bought up a lot of bombed New Zealand heads. Great curios, you know. And he's sold all of them but one. And that one he's trying to sell tonight, 'cause tomorrow's Sunday, and it would not do to be selling human heads about the streets when folks is going to churches. A human head? Oh, what? Whew. This guy is a weirdo. I haven't met him yet, but just based off of that, he's a weirdo. He wanted to last Sunday, but I stopped him just as he was going out of the door with 4 heads strung on a string. For all the earth, for all the earth, like a string of Indians. Okay. Indians. He's INIONS. I thought it was onions, but it's Indians. That must be some sort of slang word. This account cleared up the otherwise unaccountable mystery, and showed that the landlord, after all, had had no idea of fooling me. But at the same time, what could I think of a harpooner who stayed out of a Saturday night clean into the Holy Sabbath, engaged in such a cannibal business as selling the heads of dead idolaters? Depend upon it, landlord, that harpooner is a dangerous man. He pays regular, was the rejoinder. But come, it's a nice bed. Sol and me slept in that ere bed the night we were spliced. There's plenty of room for 2 to kick about in that bed. It's an almighty big bed, that. Why, afore we give it up, Sol used to put our Sam and little Johnny in the foot of it. But I got a dreaming and sprawling about one night, and somehow Sam got pitched on the floor, and came near breaking his arm. After that, Sal said it wouldn't do. Come along here, I'll give you a glim in a jiffy. And so saying, he lighted a candle and held it towards me, offering to lead the way. But I stood irresolute. When looking at a clock in the corner, he exclaimed, "Ay, fum, it's Sunday. You wouldn't see that harpooner tonight. He's come to anchor somewhere. Come along then. Do come, won't you come?" I considered the matter a moment, and then upstairs we went, and I was ushered into a small room, cold as a clam, and furnished, sure enough, with a prodigious bed, almost big enough indeed for any 4 harpooneers to sleep abreast. "There," said the landlord, placing the candle on a crazy old sea chest that did double duty as a washstand and center table. "There, make yourself comfortable now, and good night to ye." I turned around from eyeing the bed, but he had disappeared. Sus. That's very sus. Folding back the counterpane, I stooped over the bed. Though none of the most elegant, it yet stood the scrutiny tolerably well. I then glanced around the room, and besides the bedstead and center table, could see no other furniture belonging to the place, but a rude shelf, the 4 walls, and a papered fireboard representing a man striking a whale. Of things not properly belonging to the room, there was a hammock lashed up and thrown upon the floor in one corner, also a large seaman's bag containing the harpooner's wardrobe, no doubt in lieu of a land trunk. Likewise, there was a parcel of outlandish bone fish hooks in the shelf over the fireplace, and a tall harpoon standing at the head of the bed. But what is this on the chest? I took it up and held it close to the light, and I felt it and smelt it and tried every way possible to arrive at some satisfactory conclusion concerning it. I can compare it to nothing but a large doormat, ornamented at the edges with little tinkling tags, something like the stained porcupine quills around an Indian moccasin. There was a hole or slit in the middle of this mat, as you see the same in South American ponchos. But could it be possible that any sober harpooner would get into a doormat and parade the streets of any Christian town in that sort of guise? I put it on to try it, and it weighed me down like a hamper, being uncommonly shaggy and thick, and I thought a little damp, as though this mysterious harpooner had been wearing it of a rainy day. I went up in it to a bit of glass stuck against the wall, and I never saw such a sight in my life. I tore myself out of it in such a hurry that I gave myself a kink in the neck. So this thing didn't look all that great. Kind of scary, but by the description here. I sat down on the side of the bed and commenced thinking about this head-peddling harpooner and his doormat. Doormat. After thinking some time on the bedside, I got up and took off my monkey jacket, and then stood in the middle of the room thinking, and then took off my coat, and thought a little more in my shirt sleeves. But beginning to feel very cold now, half undressed as I was, and remembering what the landlord said about the harpooneers not coming home at all that night, it being so very late, I made no more ado, but jumped out of my pantaloons and boots, and then blowing out the light, tumbled into bed, and commenced myself to the care of heaven. Whether that mattress was stuffed with corn cobs or broken crockery, there is no telling, but I rolled about a good deal, and could not sleep for a long time. But at last I slid off into a light doze, and had pretty nearly made a good offing towards the land of Nod, when I heard a heavy footfall in the passage, and saw a glimmer of light come into the room from under the door. Lord save me, thinks I, that must be the harpooner, the infernal head peddler. But I lay perfectly still, and resolved not to say a word till spoken to, holding a light in one hand, and that identical New Zealand head in the other. The stranger entered the room, and without looking towards the bed, placed his candle a good way off from me on the floor in one corner, and then began working away at the knotted cords of the large bag I before spoke of as being in the room. I was all eagerness to see his face, but he kept it averted for some time while employed in unlacing the bag's mouth. This accomplished, however, he turned around, when, good heavens, what a sight! Such a face! It was of a dark, purplish-yellow color, here and there stuck over with large, blackish-looking squares. Yes, it's just as I thought. He's a terrible bedfellow. Oh no! He's been in a fight, got dreadfully cut, and here he is, just from the surgeon. Oh my goodness! But at that moment he chanced to turn his face so towards the light that I plainly saw that they could not be sticking plasters at all, those black squares on his cheeks. They were stains of some sort or other. At first I knew not what to make of this, but soon an inkling of the truth occurred to me. I remembered the story of a white man, a whaleman too, who, falling among the cannibals, had been tattooed by them. I concluded that this harpooner, in the course of his distant voyages, must have met with a similar adventure. And what is it, thought I after all? It's only his outside. A man can be honest in any sort of skin. But then, what to make of his unearthly complexion? That part of it, I mean, lying around about and completely independent of the squares of tattooing. To be sure, it might be nothing but a good coat of topical tanning, but I never heard of a hot sun's tanning a white man into a purplish yellow one. Goodness! This guy's descriptions. However, I had never been in the South Seas, and perhaps the sun there produced these extraordinary effects upon the skin. Now, while all these ideas were passing through me like lightning, this harpooner never noticed me at all. But after some difficulty, having opened his bag, he commenced fumbling in it, and presently pulled out a sort of tomahawk, and a seal-skin wallet with the hair on it. Placing these on the old chest in the middle of the room, he then took the New Zealand head, a ghastly thing enough, and crammed it down into the bag. He now took his hat off his hat, a new beaver hat, when I came nigh, singing out with fresh surprise. he almost was like, ah! There was no hair on his head, none to speak of at least, nothing but a small scalp knot twisted up on his forehead. Wow, that's a small patch of hair. At least that's what I think he's describing. His bald, purplish head now looked for all the world like a mildewed skull. Had not the stranger stood between me and the door, I would have bolted out of it quicker than ever I bolted at dinner. Even as it was, I thought something of slipping out of the window, but it was the second floor back. I am no coward, but what to make of this head-peddling purple rascal altogether past my comprehension. Ignorance is the parent of fear, and being completely nonplussed and confounded about the stranger, I confess I was now as much afraid of him as if it was the devil himself who had thus broken into my room at the dead of night. Poor guy. In fact, I was so afraid of him that I was not game enough just then to address him and demand a satisfactory answer considering what seemed inexplicable in him. Meanwhile, he continued the business of undressing, and at last showed his chest and arms. As I live, these covered parts of him were checkered with the same squares as his face. His back, too, was all over the same dark squares. He seemed to have been in a 30 years' war, and just escaped from it with his sticking plaster shirt. Still more, his very legs were marked, as if a parcel of dark green frogs were running up the trunks of young palms. It was now quite plain that he must be some abominable savage or other shipped aboard of a whaleman in the South Seas, and so landed in this Christian country. I quaked to think of it. A peddler of heads, too, perhaps the heads of his own brothers. He might take a fancy to mine. Heavens! Look at that tomahawk! This guy. In all honesty, I would probably have the same reaction and thoughts. I mean, this guy sounds terribly terrifying. But there was no time for shuddering, for now the savage went about something that completely fascinated my attention and convinced me that he must indeed be a heathen. Going to his heavy grego, or rappel, or dreadnought, which he had previously hung on a chair, he fumbled in the pockets and produced a length of curious little deformed image with a hunch on its back, and exactly the color of a 3-days-old Congo baby. Remembering the embalmed head, at first I almost thought that this black mannequin was a real baby preserved in some similar manner. But seeing that it was not at all limber, and that it glistened a good deal like polished ebony, I concluded that it must be nothing but a wooden idol, which indeed it proved to be. For now the savage goes up to the empty fireplace and removed the papered fireboard. Sets up his little hunched-backed image like a tenpin between the andirons. The chimney jambs and all the bricks inside were very sooty, so that I thought this fireplace made a very appropriate little shrine or chapel for his Congo idol. I now screwed my eyes hard towards the half-hidden image, feeling but ill at ease meantime, to see what was next to follow. First he takes about a double handful of shavings out of his grego pocket, and places them carefully before the idol, then laying a bit of ship biscuit on top and applying the flame from the lamp, he kindled the shavings into a sacrificial blaze. Presently, after many hasty snatches into the fire, and still hastier withdrawals of his fingers, whereby he seemed to be scorching them badly, he at last succeeded in drawing out the biscuit. Then, blowing off the heat and ashes a little, he made a polite offer of it to the little negro. But the little devil did not seem to fancy such dry sort of fare at all. He never moved his lips. All these strange antics were accompanied by still stranger guttural noises from the devotee, who seemed to be praying in a sing-song or else singing some pagan psalmody or other, during which his face twitched about in the most unnatural manner. At last, extinguishing the fire, he took the idol up very unceremoniously, and bagged it again in his grego pocket, as carelessly as if he were a sportsman bagging a dead woodcock. As these queer proceedings increased my uncomfortableness, and seeing him now exhibiting strong symptoms of concluding his business operations, and jumping into bed with me, I thought it was high time, now or never, before the light was put out, to break the spell in which I had so long been bound. Being very curious about people can be, what's the word? Captivating. There we go. But the interval I spent in deliberating what to say was a fatal one. Taking upon his tomahawk from the table, he examined the head of it for an instant, and then holding it to the light, with his mouth at the handle, He puffed out great clouds of tobacco smoke. The next moment the light was extinguished, and this wild cannibal, tomahawk between his teeth, sprang into bed with me. I sang out, I could not help it now, and giving a sudden grunt of astonishment, he began feeling me. Like, what? Stammering out something, I knew not what. I rolled away from him against the wall and then conjured him, whoever or whatever he might be, to keep quiet and let me get up and light the lamp again. But his guttural responses satisfied me at once that he but ill comprehended my meaning. Who devil you? He at last said. You speak damn me, I killee. And so saying, the lighted tomahawk began flourishing about me in the dark. Landlord, for God's sake, Peter Coffin, I shouted. Landlord! Watch Coffin, angels save me! Speaky, telly me who ye be, and damn me, I kill ye. Again growled the cannibal, while his horrid flourishings of the tomahawk scattered the hot tobacco ashes about me till I thought my linen would get on fire. But thank heaven, at that moment the landlord came into the room, light in hand, not land in hand, light in hand, and leaping from the bed, I ran up to him. Don't be afraid now, said he, grinning again. Quick egg here wouldn't harm a hair on your head. Stop your grinning, I shouted. And why didn't you tell me that infernal harpooner was a cannibal? I thought you knew. I thought you knew it. Didn't I tell you he was a peddling heads around town? But turn flukes again and go to sleep. Quick, look here. You sabi me, I sabi you. This man sleepy, you sabi? Me sabi plenty, granted Queequeg, puffing away at his pipe and sitting up in bed. You get in, he added, motioning to me with his tomahawk and throwing the clothes to one side. He really did this in not only a civil but a really kind and charitable way. I stood looking at him a moment. For all his tattooings, he was, on the whole, a clean, comely-looking cannibal. What's all this fuss I have been making about, thought I to myself. The man's a human being just as I am. He has just as much reason to fear me as I have to be afraid of him. Better sleep with a sober cannibal than a drunken Christian. Landlord, said I, tell him to stash his tomahawk there, or pipe, or whatever you call it. Tell him to stop smoking, in short, and I will turn in with him. But I don't fancy having a man smoking in bed with me. It's dangerous. Besides, I ain't insured. This being told to Queequeg, he at once complied, and again politely mentioned me to get into bed. Rolling over to one side as much to say, I wouldn't touch a leg of ye. Good night, landlord, said I. You may go. I turned in and never slept better in my life. Oh. Well, after such an ordeal, I bet you would sleep like a stone. Yo, what a story. This is a wild one. these old sayings and old words and hey, the slang as well. It gets me. Queequeg, or something like that. That's quite a name. Sabi. I wonder what that means. Obviously, it's not an English word, so I won't know. Okay. Let's see. Okay, 30 minutes. I should be able to do this one in as much time. Let's continue then, shall we? With chapter 4. The counterpane. Whatever a counterpane is. Let's write that down. Upon waking the next morning about daylight, I found Queequeg's arm thrown over me in the most loving and affectionate manner. You had almost thought I had been his wife. This counterpane was of patchwork, full of odd little party-colored squares and triangles, and his arm of his tattooed all over with an interminable Cretan labyrinth of a figure, no two parts of which were of one precise shade, owing, I suppose, to his keeping this arm at sea unmethodically in sun and shade, his shirt sleeves irregularly rolled up at various times. This same arm of his, I say, looked for all the world like a strip of that same patchwork quilt. Indeed, partly laying on it as the arm did when I first awoke. I could hardly tell it from the quilt, they so blended their hues together, and it was only by the sense of weight and pressure that I could tell that Queequeg was hugging me. Come here, you. Oh well. At least he didn't need to worry about being cold. So obviously I think this is this guy's first experience in sharing a bed. My sensations were strange. Let me try to explain them. This is gonna be funny. I'm telling you, this is a comedy. When I was a child, I well remember a somewhat similar circumstance that befell me. Whether it was a reality or a dream, I never could entirely settle. The circumstances was this. I had been cutting up some caper or other, I think it was trying to crawl up the chimney, as I had seen a little sweep do a few days previous. And my stepmother, who somehow or other was all the time whipping me and sending me to bed supperless. My mother dragged me by the legs out of the chimney and packed me off to bed. Though it was only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the 21st June, the longest day in the year, in our hemisphere. I felt dreadfully, but there was no help for it. So upstairs I went to my little room in the third floor, undressed myself as slowly as possible so as to kill time, and with a bitter sigh got between the sheets. I lay there dismally calculating that 16 entire hours must elapse before I could hope for a resurrection. 16 hours in bed. The small of my back ached to think of it. And it was so light too, the sun shining in at the window and a great rattling of coaches in the streets, and the sound of gay voices all over the house. I felt worse and worse. At last I got up, dressed, and softly going down in my stockinged feet, sought out my stepmother and suddenly threw myself at her feet, beseeching her as a particular favor to give me a good slippering for my misbehavior. Anything indeed, but condemning me to lie abed such an unendurable length of time. But she was the best and most conscientious of stepmothers, and back I had to go to my room. For several hours I lay there, broad awake, feeling a great deal worse than I have ever done since. Even from the greatest subsequent misfortunes. At last I must have fallen into a troubled nightmare of a doze, and slowly waking from it, I half steeped in dreams. I opened my eyes, and the before sunlit room was now wrapped in outer darkness. Instantly I felt a shock running through all my frame. Nothing was to be seen, and nothing was to be heard, but a supernatural hand seemed placed in mine. My arm hung over the counterpane, and the nameless, unimaginable, silent form or phantom to which the hand belonged seemed closely seated by my bedside. For what seemed ages piled on ages, I lay there, frozen with the most awful fears, not daring to drag away my hand, yet ever thinking that if I could but stir it 1 single inch, the horrid spell would be broken. I knew not how this consciousness at last glided away from me, but waking in the morning, I shudderingly remembered it all, and for days and weeks and months afterwards, I lost myself in confounding attempts to explain the mystery. Nay, to this very hour, I often puzzle myself with it. Now take away the awful fear, and my sensations at feeling the supernatural hand in mine were very similar, in the strangeness, to those which I experienced on waking up and seeing Queequeg's pagan arm thrown around me. But at length all the past night's events soberly recurred, one by one, in fixed reality, and then I lay only alive to the comical predicament. For though I tried to move his arm, unlock his bridegroom clasp, yet, sleeping as he was, he still hugged me tightly, as though naught but death should part us twain. I now strove to rouse him. Queequeg! But his only answer was a snore. I then rolled over, my neck feeling as if it were in a horse collar, and suddenly felt a slight scratch. Throwing aside the counterpane, there lay the tomahawk sleeping by the savage side, as if it were a hatchet-faced baby. A pretty pickle, truly, thought I. A bed here in a strange house in the broad day, with a cannibal and a tomahawk. Queequeg! In the name of goodness, Queequeg, awake! At length, by dint of much riling? Oh, wriggling. Never mind. Okay, much wriggling and loud and incessant expostulations upon the unbecomingness of his hugging a fellow male in that matrimonial sort of style, I succeeded in extracting a grunt, and presently he drew back his arm, shook himself all over like a Newfoundland dog just from the water, and sat up in bed, stiff as a pikestaff, looking at me and rubbing his eyes as if he did not altogether remember how I came to be there, though a dim consciousness of knowing something about me seemed slowly dawning over him. Meanwhile, I lay quietly eyeing him, having no serious misgivings now, and bent upon narrowly observing so curious a creature, when at last his mind seemed made up touching the character of his bedfellow, and he became, as it were, reconciled to the fact. He jumped out upon the floor, and by certain signs and sounds gave me to the understand that if it pleased me he would dress first, and then leave me to dress afterwards, leaving the whole apartment to myself. Thinks I, Queequeg, under the circumstances, this is a very civilized overture. But the truth is, these savages have an innate sense of delicacy. Say what you will, it is marvelous how essentially polite they are. I pay this particular compliment to Queequeg because he treated me with so much civility and consideration, while I was guilty of great rudeness, staring at him from the bed and watching all his toilet motions, for the time my curiosity getting the better of my breeding. Nevertheless, a man like Queequeg you don't see every day. He and his ways were well worth unusual regarding. He commenced dressing at top by donning his beaver hat, a very tall one, by the by, and then, still minus his trousers, he hunted up his boots. What under the heavens he did it for, I cannot tell, but his next movement was to crush himself, boots in hand and hat on, under the bed, when from sundry violent gaspings and strainings, I inferred he was hard at work booting himself. Those boots are difficult to get on, okay? Though by no law of propriety that I ever heard of is any man required to be private when putting on his boots. But Queequeg, do you see, was a creature in the transition stage. Transition stage. Now this is an interesting collection of words there. Neither caterpillar nor butterfly. He was just enough civilized to show off his outlandishness in the strangest possible manners. His education was not yet completed. He was an undergraduate. If he had not been a small degree civilized, he very probably would not have troubled himself with boots at all. But then, if he had not been still a savage, he never would have dreamt of getting under the bed to put them on. At last he emerged with his hat very much dented and crushed down over his eyes, and began creaking and limping about the room, as if not being much accustomed to boots. His pair of damp, wrinkled cowhide ones, probably not made to order either, rather pinched and tormented him at the first go off of a bitter cold morning. Seeing now that there were no curtains in the window, and that the street being very narrow, the house opposite commanded a plain view into the room, and observing more and more the indecorous figure that Queequeg made, staving about with little else but his hat and boots on. I begged him as well as I could to accelerate his toilet somewhat, and particularly to get into his pantaloons as soon as possible. He complied, and then proceeded to wash himself. At that time in the morning any Christian would have washed his face, but Queequeg, to my amazement, contented himself with restricting his ablutions to his chest, arms, and hands. He then donned his waistcoat, and taking up a piece of hard soap on the washstand center table, dipped it into water and commenced lathering his face. I was watching to see where he kept his razor, when lo and behold he takes the harpoon from the bed corner, slips out the long wooden stock, unsheathes the head, wets it a little on his boot, and striding up to the bit of mirror against the wall, begins a vigorous scraping, or rather harpooning, of his cheeks. I guess whatever works, eh? That must be quite uncomfortable. Thinks I, Queequeg, this is using Roger's best cutlery with a vengeance. Afterwards I wondered the less at this operation when I came to know of what fine steel the head of a harpoon is made, and how exceedingly sharp the long straight edges are always kept. The rest of his toilet was soon achieved, and he proudly marched out of the room, wrapped up in his great pilot monkey jacket, and sporting his harpoon like a marshal's baton. And next week we will continue with chapters 5, breakfast. I don't know. This is a this is a busy book. Lots and lots of descriptions. Very detailed. Very, very detailed. Shoo! What a read so far. So far, I totally think of this book as a pure comedy. Alrighty. BRB, I'm gonna go and get my dictionary while I still have some time. And then we shall look at the meaning of these words. I think that one needs an E. There we go. Oh, I BRB. McBookcat. Huh. That seems to be me indeed. Okay, so here is the Encarta, the legendary dictionary. Right, so circumambulate. That's quite the word there. Whoops. Sorry about that. Maybe. circuit, circular, circumambulate. Okay, so I was correct, like walk around. Walk around. To walk around something, like example, round the dead, a tomb, or a sacred site as part of a ritual. Let me see. Maybe you guys can also read that. Here we go. Circumambulate. I even have it there. Circumambulate. Okay, so I'm gonna get a different color. I'm gonna write there. Walk around. Counter pain. Counter, counteract, counterattack, counterclaim, countermine, counterproof, okay, counterpoint, counterplan, counterpain. It's easier to move the book. There we go. Counterpane. A cover for a bed and its bedding. Alteration under the influence of pain or panel of earlier counterpoint. Via Old French form, ultimately medieval Latin. Literally stitched quilt. Interesting. Cover for bed. Yeah, I'm just gonna say cover for bed. So kind of like a blanket kind of thing. Right. Pasagrian. Let's see if that word even if it even is a word. And sometimes this book also has names. So that also helps. Pathfinder. Nope. That does not exist. So I'll just do a question mark. The average brain's ultimate storage capacity is around 2.5 million gigabytes. That is wild. That's a lot of information. Alright, perdition. There we go. Nice quick find. Perdition. Let me see. I'm gonna have to move the camera a little bit. Cool. The book is a little bit unhandy. Alright, perdition. Punishment in hell. In some religions, the state of everlasting punishment in hell that sinners endure after death. That's number 1. Number 2, hell itself as a location. 3, complete destruction. Complete destruction or ruin. Via Old French from ultimately, Latin perdere, literally to put to destruction. From there, to put. Interesting. I like learning where words come from. Reveries. I'm not sure. Let's see. He has to go back. Reversal. Reverie. Okay. Alright, it's a little bit far. Let's see. It's more fun so when you guys can also see. Let's move a little closer. There we go. Reverie. A state of idle and pleasant contemplation. From French formed from rêver to dream, of unknown origin. So to dream. They're all just standing there dreaming. After that it's full though. So based on what, it's impossible for any human to live forever. Yeah. Road to Perdition. I've never seen that movie, and one of my uncles really doesn't like Tom Hanks. I take it Road to Perdition is the name of a movie. I don't think I've heard of it. Or, well, seen it. Alright, so reverie is a state of idle and pleasant contemplation. State of idle thinking. Just standing there, thinking. Alrighty, last one. Scrimshander. Don't even know if that is a word, and whether or not it exists. Ah, okay, so it is a name of a movie. Okay, Scrimshander. And Skillet, Skinny, Skipper, Skite, Skull, Skullduggery. Yeah, I don't see anything for Scrimshander. Gold cap, skunk, sky. Yeah, no, that's none of that. There is SKR, and then and then Skua or something like that, but no Scrim, no Scrimshander or anything. How sad. Let us see if Professor Google will shine a light on it for us. Your new heater arrives on Saturday, but you found out after you ordered it the weather will become milder over the next 4 days. But meh, it will just be stored until next winter. Yeah. Better to have it than to not have it and need it. Ready, let's see. The first one, Pythagorean. Let's see. Pythagorean maxim. Let's see what Professor Google says. That's an old saying. Yes. Ah, I'm not the only one to wonder what Melville meant by Pythagorean maxim. By the the word, okay? Melville means the forbidding of eating beans, which was believed in antiquity to have been one of the rules of the Pythagorean cult. There was a cult with that name? Wow. The passage from Moby Dick is thus a fart joke. This is hilarious. Okay, let me read that. The passage from Moby Dick is thus a fart joke. If you violate the Pythagorean maxim, eat beans, then you will find that winds from astern, farts, become prevalent. Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. It's a fart joke. I knew it was a comedy. I knew it. Okay, next one. Crimshander. A scrimshander is a person who creates scrimshaw, the traditional art of engraving or carving intricate designs onto whale teeth, bones, or ivory. Oh, let me show you guys. Let's do that. And then... Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Ha! There we go. There we have one. With a boat, a ship, and some clouds, and what I can only think of as a kraken tentacle, or maybe a whale. Not entirely sure. Then it has a word. I can't even spell it properly, but look it up. Very happy trick if you can't figure out a word, and no, the irony isn't lost on me. Scrimshaw! Yeah! Is this Scrimshaw? So a scrimshander is someone who draws on ivory, bones, and whale teeth. Interesting. Haven't seen it in years. The word scrimshaw? I'm telling you, these old books have some really cool words. And some really cool names for art forms. Yeah. I last saw one when I was a kid, and I was in somebody's house, and they had all these like strange. They had all these like strange like tusks and things, and all of them had like drawings on it, and it was really cool. Some of them weren't really so nice, but there was one that had like a similar picture to this one. Very similar. And this is nice. It passes the time, I suppose. So you want me to search Fenitice? Is that what you want me to do, Data? You want me to search that word? I don't think that's an English word. Let me see. Because there is a similar word. There's a Fenestella. And that is like a small opening or holding relics at the south side of an altar in Roman Catholic Church. The other one, and the other meaning for it is a niche in the wall. A niche. A hollow out. It's a word that describes the ability to break down other words so they are easier to say and spell, and yet it's ironic that I can't even spell the word without speaking it. Okay. Well, I don't see it here. That is an interesting word, though. Let's see, maybe Google can help us. No, not feminized. That's not the word we're looking for. It doesn't recognize it. Oops. Alrighty. Well, while Data is looking for that word, that means that describes the ability to break down other words. Let us go and find our raid target. Let us see. Alrighty, I think I found our target. Let me see. Do I have a shout out button for him? Probably not. I don't. It's okay. I must fix. He's cool, he's chill, and he's a very chill, family-friendly streamer. Currently playing Kirby and the Forgotten Land on the Nintendo Switch. I quite like to hang out in his chat sometimes. I'll give him a shouty in the meantime. There we go. There is a shouty for him. Alrighty, let's see. Can't remember. There was something else he played and I watched. Was it somebody else? No, I think it was somebody else. I was also playing like some sort of Kirby game. But it was funny because I can't remember who it was, but they didn't have much patience, so they kept on just like going for something and getting themselves stuck on the spiky sides. Well, here is the raid message. Give that a sneaky little copy. And I'll just get the raid command ready. While we wait for Data to come back with that word, I'm waiting in suspense. Suspense, I say. Here we go. And now I've also copied my raid message because I always forget. I always forget. Why do people forget? That is the question. Alright, let me bring the music back up to where it was. Here we go. Nice. I need a haircut again. What's my hair doing over there? weird things. That's what it's doing. Let me see. Can I type in time? Let me see. Is it gonna disappear before I jump? Please don't disappear. Ah, too early. I mean, too late. Let's see. Yay! Got it. Got it, got it, got it. Got it, got it, got it. I caught the star. Yay me! You can't find it, but you know it exists. We know you're out there, word. We know it. And we'll find you one day. Thanks for trying to find it, Data. It's such a curious thing. You know a certain word exists, and then you just cannot find it at the moment you need to find it. So weird. But thank you. I will definitely see if I can find a word that's like that. That, like you say, describes the ability to break down other words so that they are easier to say and spell. Word files. The text is out there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Alrighty folks, let us raid out. Here is the raid message once more. Give it a sneaky little copy. And I will see you guys in Sente's chat. Give him a follow if you like his content. And yeah, say hello. He's cool. Alrighty friends. See you all for tomorrow's Subnautica. The X-Files was weird. Tell me about it. My mom loved that show. And I don't remember much. I remember some weird things, but I don't really remember the show. Maybe it's because I didn't really watch it. But thank you, everybody, for joining me on today's reading of Moby Dick. And yeah, we will continue next week. And yes, it was extremely unique. It was, as they say, before its time. Because nowadays everybody's very big into sci-fi and stuff like that. Back then it was still sort of just coming in and so on. So people found it a bit strange and something to get used to, I guess. But I shall see you all tomorrow for some deep diving in Subnautica shenanigans. Hopefully, I'll be able to do everything that I need to do and not die. Whether that be munched or hugged by Sir Hugs a lot. So yeah, and we can go deeper now, I think, if I remember correctly. So now we shall be going deeper tomorrow in Subnautica. Wish me luck. Alrighty, Stay awesome, everybody. Thank you again for your time and hanging out and chilling with me and just being your awesome lurker selves. I hope you enjoyed this scuffed reading of mine and my very strange reactions to it. And yeah, well, you'll get more of it next week until this book is finished. Bye-bye, everybody. See you tomorrow. Take care. God bless. Love you all. Mwah! And take care of yourselves. Have an awesome morning, night, afternoon, whatever time it may be for you. May it be restful. Bye-bye.